Welcome to the Work to Next podcast, the podcast that topples your TBR. And today we have our resident literary fiction book recommender, Laura. Welcome back.
Laura, I love being on your podcast. I think this is my third time, maybe.
Oh, your fourth time. I think
Maybe
it's yeah, I think so. We've been friends since before the pandemic, since 2019. You're like a longtime friend. We're bookstagram friends. When I moved to Chicago, you were so much helpful, like connecting with people local and helping me just get through the pandemic time. So I am so grateful. And you have written books, you've written middle grade, but I love your literary fiction recommendations because you actually give me books that I'm like, oh, I'm actually interested in reading.
Good. Good. Well, I love it when you have me on your podcast, and it's such an honor to be here. And you know that I gravitate towards literary fiction, like you were just saying. And some of my books kind of tend to be darker. I always go for like really weighty books, but it's always a fun challenge, if you will, to be on your podcast because it forces me to kind of think about different recommendations, that your listeners are going to want to read. And so I take that on as like this personal challenge, and it's really fun to come up with my list. And so today, sort of the hook that I'm going to talk about today are 6 books that will break your heart. And I know that sounds really sad, but the key here is that they'll break your heart in the best way possible because there is like dysfunction and messy relationships, but there's also tenderness and love and so much hope. And this may or may not be kind of a spoiler, but like they all end on a really high note. Like they all end with joy and optimism. And I think that's important because I don't want, your listeners to get bogged down in, oh my God, these are so depressing and serious because they really aren't. They're beautiful books that will, I think, restore people's faith in humanity and love and connection.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited for these recommendations because you just said I don't like any sad endings. I don't like people killing the character on the last chapter and not agree with it or agree with the character's death. I like books that give me some hope, some joy because life is too traumatic and it's too hard. So I want someone to restore me to sanity or escape me to the possibility of a much better place than we left it when we started.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, I like that.
Let's get the recommendations.
Okay. I also will say before I jump into these that all 6 of them are new-ish releases. They all have come out in the last, I would say, year or two. So they should be, they're fresh and relevant, but they also should be easy for your listeners to get. I don't think they'll be too hard to get your hands on. And the other thing I want to say is that all of them would make great book discussion groups. So if anyone out there is in a book club and is looking for a great option, any of these are going to do the trick. So.
Oh, even better because we're always looking for book club recommendations. I think after the pandemic, the post-pandemic world has seen a surge of some book community and connecting with other readers. Not only the pandemic gave us a community of readers and everyone's coming back to reading, but now like we need to discuss, we need to talk about it, we need to connect with other people, fangirl, and just have I'm part of a couple book clubs and it's just been fun. But we're always on the lookout for next book recommendations. So I love this.
Good.
Episode.
Good. Okay. Also, I wanted to say that some of the authors I'm going to talk about might be brand new to you and your listeners, which is awesome. There are a few that you will have already heard of. So I feel like I kind of have a nice, spectrum here of authors maybe that are less well-known and then authors that are more well-known. So hopefully I will meet everyone's needs through these 6 recommendations. Okay. So to kick us off, my first book that I want to talk about is called A Winter's Rhyme by Carol Dunbar. So A Winter's Rhyme is this harrowing and emotional novel set in the Midwest, which of course, I live in the Midwest, so I'm a sucker for a good Midwest story. It centers on a 25-year-old veteran Army mechanic named Mallory. And she's back from her tour of duty and she's trying to figure out what comes next for her in her life. And she's living with her new girlfriend, Andrea, and she's working overnights at a gas station store, which is great. The scenes at the gas station are spot on. So they're living together in Andrea's beautiful cabin, kind of off the grid. And it's this sanctuary for Mallory until Andrea's loving behavior begins to turn controlling and abusive. So Mallory, after a big fight, sort of escapes into the frigid night, and alongside of the road, she stumbles into this teenage girl who is clearly injured and who's asking for help. And this teenage girl's name is Shay. And Mallory sort of jumps headfirst into wanting to help Shay. But she quickly discovers that Shay is not the only one who needs saving. Spoiler alert, it's Mallory herself who needs saving. So this is a beautiful story of sisterhood and second chances, and it's really about learning to love and stand up for yourself despite trauma and a rocky past. And it's Carol Dunbar's second novel, and just like her first, which is called The Net Beneath Us, it is lyrical, it is lush, it has an amazing sense of place. It's all about this isolated rural living. And there is such redemption. And like I said, such hope in this story. So I think it is just exquisite literary fiction. It's really beautiful. Also, science lesson for the day. I just have to say this. But when I talk about A Winter's Rhyme is actually spelled R-I-M-E in this case, in the title. It's not R-H-Y-M-E. And I did some research. Rhyme ice. I've seen it before here in Wisconsin where I live, but I didn't know this is what it was called. So it's when super cold water droplets freeze onto surfaces. And so it looks like this opaque coating of like tiny white granular particles, like almost like little tiny white feathers, over every stick, every branch. And so that's what rhyme is here in Carol Dunbar's title.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited.
Beautiful.
Oh.
Yes.
And Ryan's lesson and woman in the
That's about all the science I've done recently, and that's probably all the science I'll do for a while. But hey, I'm here to serve. So the second book, also kind of weather-related actually, is called The Snowbirds by Christina Clancy, and this has gotten a lot of Instagram love. The premise of Christy Clancy's third novel, I think, is fascinating. What happens when a couple has very different preferences about weather? Now, that kind of sounds silly, but I know from my own life that there are very real people who cannot do cold, snowy winters, like the winters here in Wisconsin. And that is very much the main character in The Snowbirds. Her name is Kim. She and her longtime partner, Grant, live in my own state of Wisconsin, and she is absolutely over it. She is demoralized by the cold temperatures. And she gets this really exciting opportunity to sort of take like a sabbatical in Palm Springs, California. And Grant accompanies her, but he does so kicking and screaming. He's not happy about this. So Kim and Grant settle into this fabulous condo that's owned by Kim's flamboyant gay ex-husband. There's a whole great side plot there. He's letting them stay there rent-free while he sort of gallivants around the world. And so Kim and Grant settle into this, gorgeous sunshine living. They sit by the pool, they drink their cocktails. There's sunshine, there's glamour, there's all of that. Until Grant takes up hiking. And he becomes lost in the mountains that tower over Palm Springs, which, as I've learned from reading The Snowbirds, can be literally deadly. Like when people get lost, like the local, rescue force shuts down the mountains. They send out helicopters, drones. They look for the lost people. It's really kind of a whole big drama. So this is what happens to Grant. He goes missing. The local authorities shut down the mountains. But Kim begins to wonder if this whole thing was really intentional on Grant's part. Did he really get lost? Or has he just left her? It's a very interesting question. So this story is all about character development. It's about midlife, partnership, and finding our center. And I also think it's a really compelling exploration of the changing love between two people over a number of years. So kind of a slow burn of a story, really great, especially if you love Palm Springs. I have never been, but there's a real strong Palm Springs vibe, and people in Palm Springs are eating it up. So yeah.
I feel like I should, that's a fun trip to do, going to Palm Springs, stay in a Kishi hotel and go into the desert, just have fun. And then, have this balancing because I feel like there's thrifting, there's, hiking. And
There's
fun
everything
stuff.
there. I mean, when you read the Snowbirds, you see kind of, like you said, like there's the hiking, but there's also the glamour, and there are all these, starlets.
Well,
From LA.
yeah. I don't know. Maybe read a retreat in Palm Springs might be a good idea.
I would love that. Maybe Christy
Yes.
Clancy could host us because she has a condo out there and she's always out there. I'm sure she would. I love that. Okay, I'm going to move to a different book now, and this one is by a man. So it's a 40-Year Kiss by Nicholas Butler, and I've read all of Nicholas Butler's books. I've loved them. This one, his newest one, is sort of a departure for him because I feel like his other books are what I would call maybe more masculine, if you will. But this one, it's really different. It's a lovely, again, a slow burn of a story, if you will. So the book opens and we have 60-something-year-old Charlie who's sitting on a bar stool in a drinking establishment, nervously waiting for his ex-wife, Vivian, to join him for a drink. So Charlie, we learned from the very beginning, he's not perfect. He's made some really big mistakes, but he's filled with this sense of elation and hope, and of course, anxiety, as he anticipates Vivian walking through the door. So the two of them had been married about 40 years before, back in the 1980s. They'd been married for about 4 years, and they haven't seen each other since they got divorced. So, when 40 years have passed and you haven't seen this person that you were formerly married to, there are a lot of things that the other person is not aware of, like maybe some secrets, perhaps, or some vices, or maybe some decisions or moments maybe you'd like to sweep under the rug. But Charlie really wants to reconnect with her. So this is the story of their beautiful, very messy relationship. Do they give it another go? Do they not? I'm not going to tell you. You have to read the book to find out. But I will share that Nick Butler actually based this story on a real life couple. Nick himself was sitting on a bar stool and a couple came in and sat behind him. And Nick sat there nursing his drink, blushing furiously as he's listening to this couple talk behind him. And the man was telling the woman, "I'm still in love with you. I've never stopped thinking about you. Can I kiss you?" And Nick, pulls out a pencil and a piece of paper and he starts taking notes. And that's where he got the idea for this book. So pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Real life inspires a book and about the story of how to unravels,
Yeah, and I was going to say, I like that in this book, the main characters here, this couple, they're in their 60s. And I love that because I don't always want to read about, people falling in love in their 20s. I mean, I'm in my 50s. I love kind of the span of the full human experience. And I think it's really neat to read about people that age.
Yep. I love the fact is, you have this life outside. You had this moment at one point in your life, and then 40 years later, reconnecting and then seeing how far, how different you are, how much you have grown or how much you are still stunted in that space. The differences and the awareness. I don't know. It's somewhat going back to high school and seeing those high school friends at high school reunion. Yes, I really want to talk to you. Or maybe
Totally.
I want to reconnect with you and have this conversation and this in the more deeper level because you were married to that person.
You nailed it. That's exactly what this book unpacks. And it's really fascinating. So it's a beautiful book. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. Have you read this one?
I heard many wonderful things about it, but I'm intimidated by the length, and it's literary.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that because I do not say this often. This is a bold statement for me, but All the Colors of the Dark is one of the best books I have ever read. I mean, literally ever read. And I read all the time. That's all I do is read. I read this book with sweaty hands and a racing heart, and I finished it probably a month or two ago, and I can't stop thinking about it. It's still with me. Okay, we'll talk about the length in just a minute because I don't want people to get overwhelmed. So this is Chris Whitaker's fourth novel. It's the first one I've read, but it will not be the last. I want to go back and read all of his books. I think it is literary fiction at its finest. He has such a way with words, and he brings in these shimmering threads of mystery and thriller and even romance. I don't know how he does it. And the plot itself is this like intricate, breathtaking story arc from start to finish. So it begins in 1975 in a small town in rural Missouri when a teenage girl is almost abducted in broad daylight. But she's rescued at the last minute by this kid named Patch. He's called Patch. His real name is Joseph, but he was born without an eye. So he wears an eye patch. So that's why he's called Patch. And this kid is like awkward and nervy, but he miraculously saves her, but not without facing unthinkable loss and hardship of his own. And that's really, what the story is like. He does this one thing in this moment of time and how it impacts the rest of his life. So it is an epic story. It's about 600 pages. But, Laura, this is where Chris Whitaker shines. The chapters are so short. Some of them are only 2 pages. So he really chunks it out into these little bite-sized pieces, and it makes it incredibly easy to read because, you can sit down and read like a chapter or 2 and then go to bed, whatever. It's really great the way he structured it because I do think a book that size would be intimidating otherwise, but it's not. You have to believe me, like you start reading it and you're like, oh my God, I can't put it down. I think it's also hard to put down because the way that he fleshes out the characters, not just Patch, but Patch's best friend, Saint is her name. And we see a lot of the story from Saint's perspective, and you will love Saint. I mean, oh my God, they just have this incredible friendship, and then they have other friends and neighbors in this small town. And Chris Whitaker really just beautifully renders all of them. And I love the themes he incorporates. Like there's ideas about art and the search for truth and justice and women's rights. And his words, I don't know how else to describe it. They feel like home. I want to crawl inside of his words and just never leave. They just feel like home. It's really uncanny. And of course, at the heart of this book is love for friends, for children, for parents, and for safety. And I will say it's got one of the most incredible endings I have ever encountered. I loved the ending. So it's masterful. It's full of hope. It is worth the ride. It's worth the time that you put into it.
All right. So I'll fire for the library. So good.
It's so good.
I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll do it for you.
I think you should do it and tell me what you think, because this is one of those books that I have not talked to anyone who's read it and who hasn't loved it. So yeah, I'm sure there's somebody out there that didn't love it, but I have not met that person. Yeah. But okay, I have another epic. Totally different, but it's another long one. Same as It Ever Was by Claire Lombardo. So this is Claire's second novel, and it's about 500 pages. There is sex, romance, heartache, infidelity, messy families, broken hearts, forgiveness, everything you want out of a propulsive, compelling read. So our main character is Julia Ames, and she's in her 50s, which again, like I was saying before, I really like that, she's a main character who's got some years and some wisdom. I really like that. But Julia's sort of facing like this midlife crisis, similar to the quarter life crisis she faced when she was younger. And she does some things which are questionable. And I found myself like moaning out loud, no, Julia, don't do that. Because she does some things. But why this book is so masterful is that bit by bit, Claire Lombardo starts revealing Julia's backstory of growing up in Chicago with a mother who really failed her in some pretty significant ways. So now as a 50-something-year-old, Julia herself has 2 grown kids that are going through their own ups and downs, grappling with sexuality, trying to get into college, maybe getting married themselves. And so Julia's life is really in this state of upheaval. So this is her story. And I think Claire Lombardo writes with a clarity and depth about relationships that is remarkable. And she just gets humans and love and hope. And I just want to get inside her brain because I don't know how she does it. What I find fascinating about her too is that she's not married and she doesn't have kids. And she writes about, married couples and parents. And I think she grew up with a lot of siblings, if memory serves. Yeah. So her take on family life is really fabulous.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
this. I love this. And I love the fact she's not married. She doesn't have kids. And it's like, and you can still observe family, observe other people and take the best and take the worst and make it into magic.
It's really magic. I would suggest having tissues handy towards the end. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But really
I think
beautiful.
she wrote another book. I think her debut was one of those book club picks. I think maybe Resist.
Yes, it was the most fun we ever had. Yep, about the four sisters, which I enjoyed reading because I'm the oldest of four girls. And so her characters were a little more messed up than my sisters and I are, but whatever. She, again, like great family saga. Like your heart will get broken, but then you're also just going to love every page. So
go.
Okay, we're ending, Laura, with a book I know you loved because we were texting about it. Margot's Got Money Troubles by Rufi Thorpe. You loved it, didn't you?
Yeah. I loved it. I think this is like the perfect, I call it the smart beach read.
Yes.
Like you don't want to read like some, you want to take, I actually did a recommendation about smart beach read. And this was one of them, whereas we want to take it to the beach. It's interesting. It's frothy. It's fun. But at the same time, there's actually a character arc and there's actually, it's relative teen. And yes, as a teen mom, because she's a teen, but you can relate so much to Rufi and her parents' situation and like relatable to today's society where we are.
Totally.
It's so good. And the audio is excellent. So if you want to just listen to the audio, it's excellent to do. But I have to tell you, I actually was finished because I don't want to end with Margot. Like, I want more Margot.
I know.
So it's delaying leaving her behind.
It's such a great book. And like you just said, it's like deceptively, wickedly smart, right? Like you start reading it and you think, oh, this is going to kind of be like this, frothy, juicy book. Which it is, but then it's like eating cheese-covered broccoli. Like, you're still getting the broccoli. Rufi Thorpe is bringing in a lot of big, relevant themes. Yeah. So I'll give a little...
We have the pastor. We got the WWE father who's dysfunctional. Other family. We got, like, family, like baby mama drama.
It's so good. I'll give a little summary if people haven't read it, but it centers on 20-year-old Margot Millet. And she's the daughter of an ex-pro wrestler, as you just mentioned, and a former Hooters waitress. And she gets pregnant, very unplanned, after having a supremely lusty affair with her English professor at community college. So she ends up giving birth and keeping her little baby boy. And of course, she falls promptly in love with him. But how do you support an infant when you're living in an apartment with 3 other college students and you have no job to support yourself? So obviously, you invite your ex-pro wrestling dad to move in with you and you start an OnlyFans to make money. What could go wrong? Yes. Well, many things go wrong, of course. But this is Margot's, coming of age story, and it's set in Los Angeles, and I think it's funny and tender and so insightful. Rufi Thorpe does a great job of, there is some heartbreak along the way, but she really leaves us, at least she left me, feeling better about the state of the world. I don't know how she did that, right? Like the ways she brings in women's rights and women's advocacy and standing up for ourselves. I mean, Margot just sort of takes all of this on and she does it with such aplomb, if you will. Like, she's really remarkable character. And Rufi Thorpe, I love also that she does such a beautiful job of exploring relationships between friends, lovers, parents, and children. And again, there's love, there's so much tenderness, and the way that comes through in this book is so enjoyable.
Yeah, this book goes like, I realize I love Margot's journey, and we're not, my journey is very different from Margot. I did not have a baby in college, and I had to figure out on my own, like, bootstrap. And I can identify with the level of determination of, what, I'm gonna take care of this kid. I'm gonna do whatever it takes to do this. I also appreciate because Margot becomes a content creator.
Yes,
OnlyFans, it's the same thing. TikTok, and so I love the content creation aspect of it. Because it was like, oh yeah, I know this idea from Margot. Oh, the collaborations, or you have to do this content or marketing. And like she does immerse in the idea of content creation that it doesn't matter the platform. There's a level of rules and expectations and work that takes place. And she actually does it in a way while managing a new, like a 1-year-old, not even a 1-year-old, like a baby.
A baby and her dad, because her dad, of course, has some drug problems. And so she's trying to like, it's the sandwich generation, right? She's got her father, she's got her kid, she's trying to navigate all this. And I love what you just said about the content creation, because you're right. Like, she's so smart the way she uses her resources and, figures out who she needs to talk to and what she needs to do. And I have to say, I didn't know anything about OnlyFans. Am I saying it right? OnlyFans or fans only? Whatever. Yeah. OnlyFans. I didn't know anything about that until reading this book. And so I learned a lot about that. I mean, it's a very relevant and fresh story. Yeah.
It's a fresh take.
Take.
Yeah. This is a perfect, you want to take it to the beach, this is a perfect treat to take. And it's been out for years, so you should be able to get from the library without a lot of weight. Yeah. I hope so. But there's Rufi Thorpe actually has great other books in her backlist. So you can just go down her rabbit hole. These are great books to go down. And I think.
Did you read The Knockout Queen? Yeah.
No, I actually haven't.
So I love that book too. I love it. Like, kind of same vibe, like really strong female character, who has a lot of big hurdles to overcome. But again, it's that sense of determination. And there's a lot about boxing and like all of that. I didn't know very much about that. And it's really great. Add that to your list too. Our never ending TBRs.
I know, I got too many books to read. So little time. So, Laura, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'll come back anytime.
Oh, tell us about your books and tell us about where to find you.
Sure. So I am the author of 2 middle grade novels. So I write for kiddos ages like 8 to 12, and they are called Crossing the Pressure Line and Marvelous Jackson. And I write about brave kids, cute pets, small towns, and sweet treats. And my novels are standalone companion stories. So you can read them one after the other, or you could just read one and not the other. You can do it however you want, but bonus points if you read both of them, because there are a lot of the same kids in both of the stories. And you can find me, my website is laurabirdbooks.com, but I am most active on Instagram at Laura at the Library. And there are underscores between each of those words, Laura at the Library. So find me there and let's talk books anytime.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura, for being on the show.
Thank you, Laura. Keep up the great work.
Awesome. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leave, rate, or review, subscribe to the podcast. Join our newsletter at What's Your Next Blog. The links are in the newsletter. And thank you so much for listening. Bye.